You're in the Fieldhouse with the Adam Clapp Academy.
All about the ball. Yeah. Tonight, we find a way.
And they knock
A-plus content.
County
Authentic stories.
to be the 7-8
Actionable
Georgia
takeaways.
We're going
2018.
to attack them like they've never been attacked.
This is the Fieldhouse Podcast. What's up, coaches? This is Coach Tad here with another episode of the Fieldhouse Podcast, and we are back. My man, Coach Mash, is back off the field, behind the microphone where he truly belongs. How you doing today, Coach Mash?
My man, the sun is shining. God is great, and we get to play football tonight.
That's awesome. I know another big game, Collins Hills. We had the opportunity to sit down with Coach earlier in the week, get his feedback from last week's game, and talk about this week's preparation, which I'm excited to see. Excited to see how they take the momentum from last week into this week against Collins Hill. Hey, so Coach Mash, we got a great show for today. Really excited. We're bringing in someone who talk about an expert in the field of high school football. This guy knows everything there is to know about high school football because he is with Georgia High School Sports Association. So today, I'm pleased to introduce Jorge Cemadevilla. Jorge Cemadevilla. Did I say that last name right?
Perfect. If I didn't know any better,
Good.
I would think you were from Havana.
I tried really hard, trust me. I spent a lot of time working on that. But George is the general manager for GHSA, and he has taken time out of his busy schedule to sit down with us and give us kind of a 1,000-foot view of high school football from a GHSA perspective. And we're going to talk about some of the early season headlines and some of the leaders and getting some predictions for this year. So, George, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thank you, Tad. I appreciate it. And thank you, Coach Mash. Glad to be here. You guys do a great job with this show. I've listened to you before and excited to be on.
Well, thanks. Obviously, we're not professionals, but we do love to talk football.
Yes,
Well,
we do. Yes,
that's
we do.
what we're here for today. So looking forward to it.
George, I want to start off in, like I said, 30,000-foot view of GHSA. Talk to me right now. What's the overall state of the sport from a GHSA perspective?
The Georgia High School Association is in a really good place right now. Our competitive landscape in this state is bar none top 2-3 in the country. Obviously, Texas and Florida are strong contenders, but when you start talking about top 100 players, 5-star athletes, guys playing on Sundays, it just doesn't get much better than Georgia high school football. From a participation standpoint, we continue to grow. I think the NFHS just reported last year there was an increase in student athletes, across the board, 200,000 additional kids playing high school sports. So we're in a really good place. The business is healthy, and we're just trying to provide an opportunity for these kids to stay busy, to hone their leadership skills, and to prepare themselves for that next step in life, whether it's college football or just becoming a good model citizen and contributing to this state, the economy.
Those are crazy numbers to hear on that growth. Over 200,000 student athletes participating.
Yep. But, flag football is part of that. Girls wrestling is growing. So there's a lot of nuances to new sports. And then, of course, I think what parents are seeing as far as their involvement with kids and what it does for them off the field as much as anything is certainly a positive.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, George, about some of the preeminent talent in the country coming out of Georgia. I'd challenge anybody, if you're watching a college game or an NFL game this weekend, pull up the rosters and see how many of those kids come from the state of Georgia.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And football gets a lot of recognition. It's the 800-pound gorilla, as we know. But we got strong baseball. Our girls' fast pitch softball is phenomenal. Even basketball doesn't get its due because the collegiate teams in the state aren't doing as well. And so some of those players are not playing here, but Anthony Edwards and Dwight Howard and Lou Williams and Maya Moore, and, you can go on and on and on. So it's not just football.
Yeah. Well, and, one of the things you said is near and dear to our hearts here at the Fieldhouse Podcast, which is girls 7-on-7. We've had a handful of shows specifically focused on that. And I tell you, up to a couple months ago, I didn't realize just the exponential growth that sport is seeing, particularly in Georgia.
It is, give a lot of credit to the Falcons, the NFL. They really are behind this. Arthur Blank has really had this on his radar in terms of growing the sport and inclusion. I'll tell you, the first time I saw it, I was kind of blown away. The athleticism, the speed of the game. You know, really the only difference is they don't have pads on and they're playing with a little bit of
Hmm.
a smaller football, but they're drawing up plays in the dirt just like the guys are, and they get after it. Those girls are very
Yeah.
competitive.
And those plays are very creative. They're not simple, let's run it down the 4 hole. I mean, they have some very creative plays.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more power and counter, but
Well, talking about the growth of these athletes, and you mentioned some really big names and some really big stars that are coming out of the sport. I want to ask you first. Knowing that marketing yourself, kind of building a brand. Certainly now we see it in college. Started in the pros, but now we see it in college. It's starting to take place in high school sports, and NIL is a big point of conversation. So, I want to know what from the GSA standpoint, what's GSA's stance on NIL at the high school level?
Well, as you may or may not be aware, about a year or so ago, we created an NIL platform to where it is allowed in Georgia. There's obviously some rules around that, meaning the athlete can't use school uniforms or logos or be on the school property when he's doing a video shoot or any kind of social media posts, that kind of thing. But really, I think we have embraced the NIL world because it is where everything is going. It's obviously happening in the collegiate space as well, and as long as the players do it in the right way, then I think that the GHSA is supportive of those being able to kind of take advantage of their platform.
yeah, I think that's all well and good for the players, but I'd really like to talk about NIL for high school coaches in Georgia.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, we got to find out what your passions are outside of football so we can connect you with some brands, coach.
Yeah, just football.
Ford hasn't approached you yet to drive a Mustang.
No, I'm reaching out to Rawlings though.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah, well, it's interesting because obviously everybody wants to talk about NIL because it does have a major impact on the sports, and especially in the state of Georgia. We just talked about all kind of the three leading states that are really pushing football forward at a high school level. We see kids are moving in, to the state of Georgia because of the coaching. We've got some of the best coaches in the country here in Georgia. We've got some of the best football programs in the country, and so we see this drive of out of state kids coming into the sport here in Georgia. So, what I just want to how do you see NIL kind of impacting the future of high school football?
It's going to be interesting. At this point, it's been a little bit of a slow and go. Obviously, if you're trying to really leverage the brand of an individual and the social media following and the recognition of that player, there's probably more players that don't fit the bill. But certainly, we've had some examples recently with Juju Lewis from Carrollton last year, and
Yeah.
others. I mean, I'm sure back in the day, Jeff Francoeur from Parkview would have been one of those guys.
Hmm.
But I think it's just kind of a wait and see. Florida just adopted an NIL policy. They reached out to us to kind of understand how we went about it, and I think they have kind of a similar platform as we do. So I think you're going to continue to see it grow.
So yeah, so it's definitely it's here, it's growing, it's getting bigger, and obviously more states are adopting it. So well, let's talk about the impact on the field now. All right, let's talk about kind of some of the early season headlines. We're 3 weeks into the season. I guess we're getting ready to start our 4th week into the season, and let's talk about who some of the standout performers are this season so far. Who's making a surprising move. Obviously, we saw in week 1 a big, kind of blowout between Grayson and Collins Hills, which was kind of shocking to see the score. No surprise that Grayson is a dominant program. But I want to hear from you firsthand. Let's start with 4A. Who are the teams you're seeing right now that are looking really that are out of the gate strong in the 4A division?
Well, I mean, sitting at the top is North Oconee, defending state champs from last year. They don't seem to be slowing down. And that's a well-oiled machine out there. Maybe Coach Bass could tell me a little bit more about how they're doing that, but they've got a really strong program, not only in football, they won the basketball championship as well. So I don't see them going anywhere, but you never know. That's why we line up on Friday nights. There's always upsets, and something may occur down the road, but they're a serious contender to repeat. Creekside, I don't know if you guys, last year they got beat they got embarrassed by DeSoto out of Texas, 70-0, and they turn around and play them last weekend and beat them 70-28. So
What
Oh
a
my gosh.
whooping.
So that was pretty impressive. I know Coach mentioned that it wasn't revenge, it was respect. So I thought that was a good way to put it. But they've got a lot of athletes over there at Creekside. I'm not too far from that school, and a lot of speed. So in terms of surprises, I mean, I tell you, Northgate High School is a 5A team, but that's a team that really struggled last year. I think they finished 4-7, but not a very strong schedule, and they seem to have something good going on there. They have a good running back that I don't know where he came from, but that kid has put up 250 yards or so 2 weeks ago. I know Coach Mash has a running back that put up some crazy numbers last Friday.
Xander Mullins.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
300 and what, Coach, was that 340 something yards?
333, 2 touchdowns, 738 yards of offense total.
Mm,
Man,
incredible.
Man, that's crazy. But again, we've got our hometown series Chick-fil-A game this week is Cartersville hosting Calhoun. Cartersville's always in the mix in the postseason, so that seems to be continuing. And of course, Calhoun's got a strong program, but Cartersville's a lot to deal with. So a lot of the same players, and Kell is kind of sneaking up there and playing some good football right now. So we'll see what happens, but a lot of the same candidates.
And it's so funny because, going into week 4, pretty small sample size, 3 games most teams have played. Some have only played 2. And so it's really, we make these guesses on what these teams really are. But, when we get into that midseason to the region schedule, getting down to playoff cutting time, that's where we really see what teams that started off strong can sustain. And, Coach Clack says this all the time, and I love it. It's we want to play our best ball when ball matters most. So it's really interesting to see kind of the ups and downs of teams as they go through their season and see where they're peaking, where they're not peaking, that kind of thing.
You're absolutely right. Growing up in youth sports with my son, I always tell people you don't want your kid to be the best player at 12. You want to see him peak at or start peaking at 17, 16, 17, 18 years old. That's when it really kind of ends up becoming playing at the next level and that type of thing. So
yeah. Another phrase that I use all the time. I say it in my head all the time from the great Coach Frank Taminia, probably the best feeder coach that Georgia has ever seen. He's still coaching at Milton now. He says, peak late. And I love that because it really encapsulates what your mission is as a team, which is to play as many games as possible. And how do you do that? Well, you peak late at the right time. If you peak too early, you're leaving stuff on the table.
absolutely. Well said.
Let's talk 5A. All right. That's kind of near and dear to our heart. We got Milton here in our backyard. Milton was a two-time state champion. Started off the season with a tough road game and going into Buford and their $62 million complex. Had a good game. Unfortunately, had an injury from the starting quarterback, Derek Baker. But last year, they met Langston Hughes in the championship game. They beat Langston Hughes. How's 5A looking this season?
Man, 5A is tough. I mean, when you just start looking at, you mentioned Langston Hughes, Coach Boone Williams, left to go to Northeast Warner Robins. But I tell you what, they're still a really good football team. They're at the top of the rankings. Gainesville's always up there. They're Thomas County Central, Milton, Lee County, Roswell. I mean, it's amazing the strength of that 5A, very competitive landscape. It might be, I don't know. It's hard to say because all of them are really tough. But, as far as sleepers, I really don't know at this point. I think Coach said it best. It's early. There's a lot of football to be played, but it appears that a lot of the same candidates are in the mix this year. And I don't see that really changing a whole lot, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Coach, what are your
mentioned
thoughts?
Roswell. You mentioned Roswell. They got one against Buford tonight, I believe. Be a
Yeah.
great test. We get to see what that team's all about.
Wow.
Well, it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier with Georgia high school football. I mean, tonight you got Roswell, going to Buford. You've got Cartersville and Calhoun. You got Douglas County going to Langston Hughes. I mean, there's some big time games going on every weekend. I mean, this is kind of the case, and we really hadn't even hit the region schedule for the most part. So exciting.
And then in their 6A division, Carrollton lost Juju last year, but still looking strong this year. McEachern's off to a good start. How's 6A looking?
Well, I mean, similar to what we just talked about with 5A and 4A, I mean, Grayson, Buford, Douglas County, Carrollton, Lowndes, it's the same story. But, Norcross is a team that's kind of piquing my interest a little bit. They had a coaching change. They've got a strong program, but you never know how that's going to shake out when you change, the captain of the ship. But they seem to be off to a good start. I think they've got a tough game tonight. I think it's the kind of program that is up for the challenge, and it'll be interesting to follow them.
That's probably the program that in my ears has the most buzz around the state after 3 weeks. I mean, I can't go a day without somebody talking about what's Norcross going to do.
Well, you're in the mix, Coach. So you hear probably more than I do, but it seems like like I said, they're off to a good start. I think they've got a tough region. Again, if they can get into the playoffs, you never know, and they may be playing their best football at that time, and that's what it'll take for sure. In that 6A,
Parkview's going to see. We'll see.
And actually, you got Buford's hosting Roswell, but that's going to be a good test for Buford. I know they were hyped up for Milton. Number one, they were opening that stadium, playing the 2-time defending champ. So it's some good football. I wish I could go to all these games, honestly.
Well, let me tell you, one of the things that Buford needs to work on is access to that stadium, because it took about 2.5 hours to get into that Milton game, waiting in line. So
wow,
I guess that's what happens when you build a stadium that big. It was tough. If you got in there before the first half, you were lucky. Let's, I want to talk about, you mentioned some of the coaching changes, some of the new hires. You mentioned Coach Boone. So let's change subject here and let's talk more about some of the new coaches and some of the impacts that they're having. So George, kind of go through who are some of the coaches you're looking at that are at new programs this year.
Well, we mentioned a couple of them. Norcross had a coaching change, and they're off to a good start. Coach Williams from Langston Hughes going to Warner Robins, Northeast Warner Robins. That's a big move, and they haven't started out very well, but I know that program had some rich tradition and then had kind of fallen off, and I think that's why they brought him in. So although they're 0-3, I don't expect that to be the case as we kind of go through the year and he starts being able to kind of put his footprint on that program. So that's going to be one to watch. And there's a lot of new coaches out there. I know Rabun County hired
a lot of coaching changes.
One of their alum, my good friend Bill Stewart, that was at North Gwinnett, and then the last couple of years at Georgia Tech. He's on board there as their defense coordinator, and they're off to a good start as well. So a lot of movement, it seems like, but in a good way.
Yeah, and we talked about Roswell too. They've got a great hire. Looks like it's turned out well so far. John Thompson from Lee County. That's another big one. Brian Landis at Alpharetta, coming from West Georgia. So, we talk about the players and the state of football in Georgia and how it attracts players. It attracts coaches too.
It does.
Certainly does.
One that we didn't mention that's kind of interesting, another powerhouse, is Carver Columbus with Jarvis Jones, former NFL player and Pro Bowler, and they're off to 3-0 start. And I mean, they're not just winning; they're winning big. I think their point differential is like 162-25 in the first 3 games. So they're putting it on people.
Yeah. And
I think the 25 came in one game where they probably had their third team guys out there maybe and gave up some garbage yards, but they're definitely a strong powerhouse in that 2A division. That's another one that will be fun to watch. Etowah, Coach, we didn't talk about Etowah.
Yuck.
That's Brett Vavra doing a good job out there. They were 2-8 last year, and now they're off to a 1-1 start, but they lost one game to Woodstock in overtime. So they seem to be very competitive, and it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, they're going to go back to the double wing that they ran for years.
George, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What about that new coach over at what's that school? Parkview.
Parkview. Yeah, I think I've heard of that guy. He I think from my understanding, he was pretty instrumental in building Milton into what it is today. So as I mentioned, I've got a friend whose son is on the Parkview team, and it just seems it's amazing when you get somebody that has a history of winning and knows how to build a program, not just coach football, but build a program. It makes an immediate impact, and the culture changes. And we hear that word a lot, but in football, man, that is you got to have everybody rowing in the same direction. And I think Coach Clack
Mhm.
has done that. And again, it's going to take him a little time to get where he wants to be, I'm sure, but it's exciting because they're competitive and they're fighting and they're scrapping and they're just going to get better.
Yeah, and that's I think you said it right. It's coaching a football team is a lot different than building a football program. Those are different skills. And the great thing about Coach Clack is he has both of those skills. He can coach ball, he can coach the heck out of ball. But the way he talks about building that program and the intentionality to it, and then add to that the urgency to it. Obviously it takes time. It's a slow burn, but you got to have urgency. And I think that's what Coach does so well is, I know it takes time, but we are going to run with our heads on fire to get this program where we want it to be.
It's exciting. And I know that, Parkview has a really rich tradition, and Gwinnett County football is well known, obviously. And so I'm sure that's the expectation around there. And I think they hired the right guy to do it.
They certainly did. They certainly did. Let's talk about some of the
Not sure about the staff. I'm not sure about the whole staff.
definitely on the defensive side. There's some question
The
marks.
jury's still out. The jury's still out.
Let's talk about some of the players here. So obviously some big numbers. We talked about the athletes coming here, but man, some big numbers already. Only 3 weeks into the end of the season. Passing right now, leading the state. Brody Campbell out of Noonan, 928 passing yards. For rushing, Cooper Brzezinski out of North Cobb Christian, 622 yards rushing. We already mentioned Zandon Mullins last week, 338 yards on the ground. I think he had 3 touchdowns for Parkview. And receiving, we see John Matthews leading right now. He's a Noonan, another Noonan. Obviously, that John Matthews, Brody Campbell out of Noonan, 423 yards receiving right now. What are some of the players that George that you've seen that are really kind of leaving a mark right now and helping their team in a big way?
Well, it's funny you mentioned one. I happened to, obviously, with the hometown series Chick-fil-A game was our first one. The inaugural game was Noonan and East Coweta at Noonan. And ironically, small world, my youngest daughter played softball with John Matthews' sister, older sister. She was a heck of a softball player. Fast. She hit one on the ground in the infield. You were going to throw her out. She was really that fast. So John has certainly picked up. He is a sophomore, good-looking kid. I'm thinking he's about 6'1 and a half, 6'2". He's got decent size to him, a little girth. He's not a skinny Rayleigh kid, and he's only a sophomore. So, and that quarterback, he's got some D1 offers with, I think, Troy, Georgia State already. And so that's a very good combination. I got to watch him. First play of the game was an 80-yard touchdown to John. DB came. Yeah, he came up. The DB came up the corner and he missed, and he turned around, and took it to the house. So the North Cobb kid, Cooper Bazarski, I think he was a receiver last year, and they converted him to a running back, if I'm not mistaken. So he's putting up some impressive numbers. I don't know a lot about North Cobb other than they've had a lot of the Christian school. They've had a lot of success, and I think they made a deep run last year into the postseason. So. And I'm sure there's many others, including the running back from Parkview, that put up some gaudy numbers. That's just insane to run for 340 yards in a high school game on that level, of a Parkview 7A or 6A rather.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we had a kid from North Hall that got a Player of the Week award that put up about 180 yards receiving in a big win against Cherokee Bluff, who's a pretty good program as well. So. There's a lot of talent out there, and I mean, we could go on and on about the numbers, but I think at the end of the day, we all know that the stats are only so good. It comes down to wins and losses and playing as a team, and we can't forget about the guys up front, man. The Hogs, that's where it's all. I'm a firm believer, man. That is where the games are won and lost, and skill guys are a little bit easier to find, but the big boys are. And that's one thing I saw last year. As good as Carrollton is, Grayson had some men up front. Langston Hughes has men up front. I mean, I've been to some of those schools and seen those guys, and then I look at the coaching staff, and I'm like, well, now I see why they got a bunch of former NFL guys coaching these guys up, and it's crazy. I mean, in my day, we don't want to talk about wearing leather helmets, but linemen were 160 pounds. If you were 200 pounds, you were a hoss,
Yep.
But
Yeah.
Well,
those days,
I'm glad you said it because if you hadn't, I was going to that. I bet all those players you mentioned that have had a great start to the season. I bet if you asked every one of them, they're going to give credit to that offensive line because nothing happens without them.
one player I
Unlike
failed
Clack
to.
last week.
Oh,
Yeah, and I'll throw out another one. Young man by the name of Greg Hart is a quarterback for Parkview. Might be a little bit biased there, but after 2 games, we had a bye the second week. 483 yards in the air, 5 touchdowns, and
wow.
127 QB rating.
Wow. Well,
Yeah, and he's playing very efficient ball right now. Very efficient.
Yeah, he is.
I failed to mention a big part of the reason that I think McEachern is having success, other than the fact Coach Ream's doing a great job and they've got a good program that's I think on the rise. But that Casey Barner, that sophomore, I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw in the Corky Kell Classic, he had 350 something yards total,
Mm.
total yards with kick returns, receiving yards, running the ball. This past weekend, I believe he picked the ball to stop a drive that was a game-winning drive. I can't remember who they were
Wow.
playing. So he's made plays on all sides of the ball, and he's a sophomore as well. So exciting player to watch and to follow for the next couple of years.
Yeah, sign that young man up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk about so real quick. We've talked about the early storylines. I know it's really, really hard, but I'm going to put you on the spot here again, George. So, who do we think you're going to see holding that trophy in Mercedes-Benz at the either 4A, 5A, or 6A division?
I'm not a gambler, so I'm going to go with what the percentages are, I guess. But I feel like North Oconee is gonna repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Barring injury, you never know. But 5A, I think, is tough. I'm certainly not counting Milton out. They played obviously a really good Buford team with a lot of. It's kind of what that game reminds me of. It reminds me of when I was with the Falcons and we went to New Orleans to play after Katrina hit, and it was the first game, the first event.
I remember
and
that.
The NFL came in and treated that like a Super Bowl. They had pregame concerts. They made it a big event, largely in part to support New Orleans. And as soon as Gleason blocked that punt, never in my life have I been in any kind of athletic venue where it erupted. You just can't even say how loud it was. And so the game was over at that point.
It was.
We had no shot. And
we all knew it just watching it.
I know it's a different level, but I think there was so much anticipation about the stadium and Buford, and that's a tough way to kick off your season. But it also is probably a game that Coach Reeves would love to be in, no matter if you had to ask him to do it again, because that kind of tells your team pretty quickly where you think you might be, what you need to work on and improve, and you're playing the best, and that's what you want to do as a champion, especially a 2-time champion. So I think Milton's certainly a contender, but then you got Langston Hughes, and we named all the others. I think it's going to be a tough game, but I don't know. Just see who's healthy at that time of the year and who's playing their best football. Coach Mash said it best. Whoever's peaking has a good shot, but I think those are 2 of the teams that certainly are in the hunt.
I do think I'm interested to see Roswell and if they can make a run. Yeah, I don't believe they're quite there, but I think they've arrived enough where they should be able to be competitive in the postseason. I'm really interested to see that, and they're kind of near and dear to my heart as a Milton alumni. So I don't love Roswell, but I do love following them, and I live right down the street from them. So I'm looking forward to their season.
Well, that's a good program, and I know last year I think Gainesville had lost 3 games going into the postseason, and they it's like they're just all beating each other up. Roswell's playing Carrollton, they're playing Milton, they're playing Colquitt County, and I mean it's going through the gauntlet. So again, not to make excuses, but whoever can come out of those battles healthy and kind of trending in the right direction in week 9 or 10 has a good shot.
It's like the SEC. It's exactly what it's like coming out of the SEC.
It really is. It really is.
Talk to me a little about championship game. We're back at Mercedes-Benz again this year. How many years has GHSA been in the Mercedes-Benz for this championship games?
So this is the third year, this second time around. Prior to me getting here, when the Benz opened up, I think the GHSA played in the Benz. And I think for different reasons, but primarily financial. One of the things that I learned before I left the Falcons is, the World Congress Authority kind of operated and had the rights to the Georgia Dome, and the Falcons were basically a tenant. In this new venue with Mercedes-Benz, the Falcons are the operating partner, if you will. They have a lot more overhead because they've assumed more responsibility. So when it comes to parking attendants and medical staff and staffing, the ushers and the security, all that stuff is kind of more falling under the Falcons umbrella versus the World Congress Authority. So there's expenses that go with just turning the lights on and opening the doors. So fortunately, the Falcons, being a good partner, stepped up and made some concessions for us to be back there to play at Mercedes-Benz, which is where we need to be.
Agree. Yes.
There's not a better facility in the country, certainly not anywhere in the Southeast, and we don't have to worry about weather. I think the kids enjoy playing there. Coach, you can speak to that, but I would imagine if I was a high school kid and I was getting to play, the conditions are fair and equal. And so, I just think it's a great venue, and it's where high school football in Georgia belongs.
Yeah. And it's one of the best weeks of the year. You got that 4-day stretch or so of just game after game after game down at the Benz, and not just the boys football, but you've got the girls flag, which was just incredible to watch this year. So yeah, that is, to me, that's sort of the crown jewel of Georgia high school football, is that week to cap the season, that championship week at the Benz. It's just incredible.
Yep. And, it's a very supportive community. Obviously these teams that come in, when you get a Perry or a Coffee County or a Colquitt County, man, they travel in bunches.
Yes, they do.
The town doors lock up at 5:00 and everybody's heading to the game on Friday night. So that's what I love about, this state. It's a passion, it's a ritual, and it's just part of it's a way of life. But the Benz gives everybody a equal, clean, playing surface. There's no issues with weather, and that's good for everybody. The weather in December here in Georgia is dicey. It could be 65 degrees and sunny, or it could be 12 degrees with frozen rain. You just don't know.
Sitting 9 hours on 285 trying to get home.
That's right.
Yeah, I think a few people lost their jobs over that deal.
They should have. George, you mentioned a couple times what GHSA, how they partnered with the Falcons and Chick-fil-A for the hometown series. If you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about what that is and the impact it has for the student athlete.
It is why I love what I do. It is a collaborative effort between a brand that was born and invested in this Georgia community with Chick-fil-A, that does such a great job, and it's all about community. And then of course the Falcons, being the premier pro team in the market, have really supported us in a lot of ways. Not only do we play at Mercedes-Benz, but the Arthur Blank Foundation has been so generous with some donations for officiating. As you may or may not know, Coach Mash and Coach Tad, officials are hard to come by. And I don't think it's because there's a lack of interest. I always talk about this. There are so many more games. It's not just football. Now it's, when you're in baseball season, you've got high school baseball, you got JV baseball, you got travel ball, both in the spring and the fall. So it's just a mere numbers game. So the Arthur Blank Foundation has made some donations to help us recruit officials, to help offset maybe any initial costs with uniforms or fees, and that's been a huge help. So again, two great community partners, two Atlanta brands, partnering to support the Georgia High School Association to allow our student athletes to play in better venues and to help the schools, because when we try to take these gate numbers, from ticket sales and our sponsorships, that's helping. We pay the schools membership fees, we pay the catastrophic insurance, and we try to help with travel. So every dollar that we can bring in to help the schools is just a plus. So Chick-fil-A, this hometown series is so fun. We're basically doing a 14-week campaign where we're basically picking a game of the week. And we're going to communities that love Georgia high school football, that embrace it, that support it. And Chick-fil-A is just beyond generous, making a donation of $1,500 to each school. So when you call up a school and say, hey, we'd love to visit your campus. Oh, by the way, we're bringing a little check with us. It's usually pretty well received. So we've had a couple of really good games. I'll tell you the opening game, that noon in East Coweta, it was 49-24 at halftime. East Coweta was in the lead, and the game ended up noon and winning 60-56. So a lot of things happened in that fourth quarter. And then we go the following week, Parkview hosting West Forsyth, and it was just like video game numbers, man. I was following the game, and it was like, are you kidding? So those are two great games to kick it off. And this week we're at Cartersville hosting Calhoun. So down the road, we've got Milton and the Carrolltons and the Gainesvilles. And so a lot of excitement. And now I think the challenge is we're getting calls and everybody wants to be a part of that event. So kudos to this is all about Chick-fil-A and the Falcons making this happen. The Falcons obviously have a huge high school initiative with the helmet wall that Chick-fil-A is a part of at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and the girls' flag wall. So just a lot of good things. And it takes literally the community to make this happen. And this is what makes it fun to do what we do every day.
Yeah. I love what you said about the Falcons committing to helping the sport grow via the referees and the officiating. Because it is. I mean, I think that's sort of somewhat of a, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but an existential crisis for the sport, not just in Georgia, but all over the country, is lack of officiating. And what do high school coaches complain about the most, besides high school kids not doing what we ask them to do? It's officiating. Well, the better programs we have for officials and the better pipeline we have for officials, the less complaining we're probably going to have to do. So I think it's important for all of us who are involved in the sport to really get behind that push for officiating.
Absolutely. And it's a tough job, man. I mean, if you make the right call, you're supposed to make the right call. But if you just goof up one time, those coaches can be hard, right?
I know.
Yeah,
especially the defensive guys.
At the youth level, the parents can be pretty hard. I feel bad for those refs at times. I'm like, gosh, man, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
And that kind of has probably turned some folks away that maybe were considering becoming a high school official, and then they happen to go to a youth game and see that, and it just kind of makes them turn the other way. So I can tell you that the National Federation of High School Sports, the NFHS, that's a big topic for them, and it's a continual sportsmanship, and then of course last night we see what happens in the kickoff game for the NFL. Very unfortunate, but that's not the kind of things that show good leadership and show how we should conduct ourselves. So hopefully that'll continue to be a message that everyone pushes.
Well, what we got here last couple of minutes here, since you're passes with the Falcons, maybe any predictions or thoughts on how the Falcons are going to do this year? Michael Penix at the helm.
I tell you, I thought last year they had a shot to be record-wise a little better, but nobody anticipated Kirk Cousins, being injured, trying to play. I think from what I saw, it just seemed like he was trying to fight through it, but at the end of the day, he wasn't the same guy. And that hurt him. But I can see both sides. But, Penix, in the time that he's been under center, he's looked really good. He looks composed, and he throws a really nice ball, has a lot of touch. So, they got the weapons with London. I know they've got their number 2 receiver is a little banged up right now. Maybe they can get Kyle Pitts going a little bit more than what he's done the past few years, but
we need something out of Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, but Bijan Robinson, one of the most exciting players in the league, can do it all. Mm-hmm. He can run between the tackles. He can catch the ball and make things happen. Then Algiers a good 1-2 punch. He can definitely run between the tackles and usually doesn't go down after the first hit. So I think defense is improved as well.
They got picked up a lot of pieces in the offseason for defense.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like the defense could be ranked number 3 at the end of the year, but everybody just wants to talk about sacks, right? everybody wants to see somebody put up some 12 sacks, double-digit sacks. And, I don't know if it's going to be one guy. I think they got a committee, to your point. They drafted Jalen Walker. Katie, it was starting to come on last year, and then they got Pierce from Tennessee. So they got some stallions in the barn, and we'll see if it translates to being on the field. Because that first year for rookies, I think it's tough, man. The game is just everything's faster. Everything's just a snap faster. And there's an adjustment period, but at the same time, there's been other guys that come in and make an impact right away. So I think if a few of those guys can make an impact, I think they've got a shot to be very competitive, and they should win the division. I think it'll be them in Tampa, but I think Tampa is good, but I don't think they're unbeatable by any means. So should be a good season.
Yeah,
I expect them to make the playoffs.
I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I didn't even realize that the Falcons were starting this weekend. I've been so heads down on the Parkview Panthers. I just kind of looked at the schedule last night and I thought, wow, we play this weekend.
I think they open up with Tampa, don't they?
They do, yeah. Tampa at home.
Yeah. So that'll be a great game, a great test. And most of those games come down to the wire. That's the thing about the NFL. I mean, there's a lot of parity. And the difference between, back in the day when there were 16 games, between being 5-11 and 11-5 is not that big.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's definitely not. So, well, hey, I had a lot of fun here talking about the season, learning more about kind of some of the GHSA and the state of the program, and certainly excited to see what who will be there at the end and Mercedes-Benz. And so, I'd love to have you back on, George, as we get closer to the end of the season, so we can kind of bookend this and really talk about who the prospects are as we get closer to the end of the season. So
yeah, that'd be great.
I had a blast. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys having me on, Coach Mash. Great meeting you. I have to stay neutral, but I'm a closet Panther fan now, so I'll be pulling for you guys, and wish you all the best.
Yeah, we'll take
Coach
it. Appreciate that.
You're winning them over one at a time.
Absolutely.
Baby steps.
And Tad, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, George. I appreciate you coming out, joining us on this episode, guys. I really appreciate your time today, and coaches, we'll see you out in the field. Have a good one.
Take care. Good luck tonight, Coach.